hope if I come back in a year, I'm learning fast, I hope. I understand that Mark Zuckerberg came and gave a talk in Chinese, so I have to do better. Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here this afternoon with all of these open minds. I will be, as you can tell, I'm going to talk in English. And please make sure if I'm going too quickly, even for English people, I sometimes speak too quickly. So it's no problem to say if there's something you're not getting. I'm also very impressed by the technical setup. This is the best setup technically and efficiently that I've been in any talk I've given in China. So well done. So I really look forward to talking today, and I want to say one last important thing, which is I really encourage this to be interactive. So feel free to ask questions as we go along, or to save up questions for the end. And just to check on time, what time would you like to end? I'm not going to. What time do we finish?
3:45 for speech.
And then questions for about 45, 15 minutes or an hour.
Yes.
Okay, I got that. Okay, I will run on maybe a little bit longer, but I've got that. Okay. So I want to talk today, as you know, and I'm going to talk about how open can save minds, can save lives, and shape politics. I also just want to mention that Open Knowledge, which is the non-profit I helped found, to give you just a little bit of background. As you know, I've been a researcher at the University of Cambridge from the introduction. I've advised governments and organisations all over the world about digital policy and digital technology. And I also founded Open Knowledge in 2004, it's an international non-profit network. So, for example, there is there's a chapter of Open Knowledge here in China. In countries all over the world, people get involved in Open Knowledge, and they run their own efforts. So if you're interested in opening up knowledge in China, you should get involved in Open Knowledge. And I also just want to mention that as well as being kind of focused on ideas, we also do very practical work in collaboration with many other organizations. So for example, we produce an open data index. And I know that, for example, the Chinese government look at that, in fact. I met with CAICT the other day, and they look at the Global Open Data Index, which ranks governments on their performance. We build databases. So, for example, Open Spending up here is a database of government spending all over the world. We also train people. So I noticed, for example, I got given very kindly here a handbook on Gephi. And I know that one of the things we train people in at the School of Data is, for example, using tools like Gephi to understand data and make it useful to themselves. And we also build a very big database of clinical trial data, for example, in medicine. We've built the world's leading software platform that's open source for making data available, for publishing data. If you're a government, or you're a company, or you're a non-profit, or you're a university and you want to publish data, much in the way that you publish it, like you run your website, you publish web pages, but you want to publish data sets, you can use CCAN for free. It's open source and the world read books. But not all of the knowledge in our world is in that form. Not all of the information in our world can be accessed by anybody. Right? And that's one thing Open Knowledge as an organization want to do, is have all the information that isn't personal available to everybody. The other aspect of a true open world is open minds. You can have all that information. For example, there's all of these books in libraries, but people don't always go and read them, right? People aren't always open-minded to learn. So I think it's a really, I'm just so delighted to be in a group with a group called Open Minds. I think that's even more important than open knowledge. So I want to talk today about the digital economy and the choice between open and closed that will shape the 21st century. Now in this talk, I want to try and convince you that this question about open and closed information isn't just some small issue, but it's the biggest question of the 21st century. Right? Bigger even maybe than climate change as a topic or a challenge for humanity. Right? And as a political question, by that I don't mean politics in the sense of voting or elections, I just mean in the question of politics in the old sense of how do we choose to organise our society. Maybe a better way of putting it is policy. We all have to choose policies. Whatever kind of system of government we have, our governments will have to decide on policies. And I want to set out to you that this question around the digital economy and this question of open and closed, which is the policy choice, right, is the biggest, one of the, if not the biggest question of the 21st century. And it's not being looked at in that way today. Right? And I just want to mention one of the reasons for that you are aware of is if we look around, this technology is kind of growing. It's faster, it's better, it's cheaper. But I'm not sure when we stand back, if you look at history, right, 8,000 years ago, we invented kind of agriculture. And then most people were farmers. In China, most people would have grown rice or grown some other kind of food. 99% of the population did that, probably until 1900 actually, or to 1800 in the UK, or in the United States. And then came the Industrial Revolution, and people started making cars or clothing. And now we're in a world where what we're making is information. Digital technology is really information technology. So in the 21st century, most of the economies in the world will transition where what they make, the majority of what we make, the majority of our value add will be information. And I want to emphasize that we often talk about digital. I've said digital economy here because if I wrote information economy, people wouldn't be as familiar. Normally we hear about digital technology. We also hear about IT, information technology, but really, digital technology is information technology. Right? It's really information that's going on there. Think of movies or music, the ones and zeros on your hard disk, the software that runs your phone, the design of your phone, the design of the chip that runs your phone, that is all information. So not only is digital technology often built of information, but what it enables is this economy and a society built around information. Go back 50 years in China and you look at what children did. They'd have played. They'd have played with maybe little toys made of wood or cloth. But what do they do today? They're on their iPad. Now, whether that's a good thing, we can discuss, right? But the point is that even in what we do in our kind of playtime is consume information now. We don't play with a horse, we play with a horse, a virtual horse. Right? And so when you look at our economy, it's more and more information based. Right? And that is a huge transition in the structure of our economy. Somebody got louder. Right? This huge transition. And what I want to point out to you, and I want to show you today, is that transition is different from ones that have gone before. And there are similarities, maybe around innovation. There are similarities and there'll be shift in jobs. But there's also a very profound change that is not the same as what's gone before, that is truly revolutionary, and that fundamentally changes our economy and leads to this choice. So, I want to start with a story. So I promised I'd tell you about politics. So everybody here has heard of Donald Trump, right? Yeah. Okay? So he's now 45th president of the United States. Now how did that happen? That was a surprise, right? How did it happen? How did he become president? Well, I want to tell you one little bit of how he became president and how it relates to the digital economy. And it's not about Twitter, right? It's not about Donald Trump being on Twitter. It's about another part of the digital economy. Now, so here are some of the people who voted for Donald Trump, okay? Now, a key set of these supporters, a key set of people who voted him into office were blue and white collar white workers, often white, racially white, who were blue and white collar, and we also get richer, and they haven't got richer. In fact, they've sometimes seen their jobs go. You talk about the Rust Belt in the United States, places which used to make steel, or used to make manufactured goods, or used to make cars, and they don't anymore. And they've lost jobs, they've had low wages, and they're unhappy and angry. And they want to blame somebody. And Donald Trump has partly come along and given them someone to blame. It's immigrants, it's the government, not protecting American jobs. Whatever it is, he's given them something to blame. But what I want to point out is, why are they unhappy? Because it's unhappy people who look for something to blame and who ended up making Donald Trump president. It is these voters in key states in America who put him in office, who were the key people who gave him the majority in the few states he needed to become president. Now, what I want to emphasize here is this graph. This graph shows the growth in wealth of an average family in different segments of US society ordered by wealth. So this group, if you can see it at the bottom, in green, they're the poorest. They're the poorest 20% of Americans. So that's the poorest 60 million Americans. Now the next orange line is the 40%, the 40th percentile, so between 20 and 40. Then it's the 20th and 60th, and then we've got the 80th percentile, and then this is the top 10, I think, and then this is the top 5% here. Now what you can see, you can't read it here, but this is 1970. Sorry, I keep clicking on the wrong button there. And this is today. Over here is 2015. So this is about 45 years of history here. And what you can see from this graph is that the poorest people in the United States have barely got richer. The poorest, even 40% of people have barely got richer, and even the 60th percentile, the bottom 60% of people in the United States, that's the majority of people in the United States, have not really got richer in real terms. This is accounting for inflation, in real terms since 1970. But look at the richest people in the United States. They've got a lot richer. Okay? There's this huge growing gap between the rich and the poor that's expanded a lot, right? And if you looked at even the very richest, the top 1%, it's even more than that. And what I want to even emphasize, even stronger than this, we think of America as wealthy, right? It's the richest country by per capita in theory, but just about, other than Switzerland or something, on the planet. It's got the largest economy. And yet, if you look at this, the bottom 60% of people have got poorer. They've not only not got richer, they've got poorer in the last 15 years. So since 1999, the poorest 60% of Americans, or if you like, the majority of American populace have got poorer. And the poorest group, the bottom 20 percentile, the people who often voted for Trump, right, have lost 10% of their income since 1999, while the rich have got much richer. That makes people angry and upset, and that set of people helped elect Donald Trump. Now, is that something? This is like the inverse of this graph. This graph is getting richer. This is about inequality. So this graph, it's high when there's a big gap between the rich and the poor, and it's low when there's a small gap. Now, this is 1930, this is 1970, and this is 2015. Look at this, 1930 to 1970, everybody in the United States got richer, by the way. Everyone got richer between 1930 and 1970 in the United States. It was like China between 1980 and now, right? You might say, right? Everyone's getting richer, right? But one of the things that went on between 1930 and 1970 is the poor got richer faster. In this period here, you have the opposite of this graph.
everybody got richer, but these guys got much richer and these guys only got richer a little bit, right? This is falling inequality, right? Poor people in the United States, the poorest 20, 30, 40% of Americans, got richer faster than the richest. It was really shared out. Now, that changed. In my previous graphs I showed, there's been this huge growth in inequality, and now inequality in the United States is higher than it's basically been since 1900, right? And that helped make Donald Trump president. Now the irony is they voted for a Republican who will make this worse, but they voted for someone who gave them someone to blame, right? Because they don't look at graphs like this. They don't look at necessarily these graphs. They just think immigrants, or they think of something easy, right? But humans have always done that. Now what I want to ask is, this is the same period. This point was also the takeoff of the digital economy. Intel was founded in 1967. Who's heard of Intel? Yeah, they make chips. Intel, they make the chips in the computers, right? They were founded in 1967. Microsoft. Who's heard of Microsoft? Everyone's heard of Microsoft, right? When was Microsoft founded? Does anyone know? Want to make a guess? 1990? 1990, that's a good one.
1985.
1985, 1975. They were founded in 1975, Microsoft. What about Apple? When was Apple founded? 1990? 1980? Around 1978. I should double check, but I'm pretty sure it's 1978 or 1979. Right? So this 1970s was the point when the PC revolution happened, when you had this huge growth in the software industry. So this was a takeoff. Now, this was the takeoff not just of the digital age, but the closed digital economy. Prior, it was really the takeoff, and I'm going to explain what I mean by closed more later, but it was the takeoff of the closed more. Now, is there a connection? Are these graphs just a coincidence that this is the same time? There's coincidences in life. I know I was born in 1980. Is that caused Donald Trump to get elected, 30 years later? No. But is there a connection here? Is there a connection? And I'm going to say to you, yes, there is. That there is a link between the closed digital economy and that growing inequality you saw, and that growing inequality is linked to Donald Trump being elected. So the closed digital economy helped make Donald Trump president. Now, it's one of those links you don't immediately see. It takes several steps, but beneath the surface of American society, we've seen growing inequality for 35 to 40 years, and that has today meant that angry white-collar and blue-collar, particularly white workers, voted for Donald Trump, and they helped make him president. And I want to emphasize that this is not just about America. If you think this issue, the digital economy, is not, because the issue about it is like, look at, here's Foxconn, the biggest employer in China, and a great company, but I'm not criticizing any companies, but they're cutting 60,000 jobs, and they're replacing them with robots. And the date of this was May 2016, so this is about 8 months ago, right? They have a plan to replace almost every human worker with a robot, right? And they currently employ, I keep clicking on the wrong thing, sorry. They employ over 1 million people. Now, I want to go back, I'm going to explain to you in detail, but the basic logic of the closed digital economy is, in a digital economy, someone owns the digital stuff. And when it's closed, only they own it. And so they get most of the value from that stuff. Bill Gates is a billionaire. What is a robot made of? A robot isn't really made, it's made of steel, but what really makes a robot work? Software. Chips. Information. A robot is really made of information and digital technology, right? And so what's going on there is you're seeing workers replaced, often the workers who are lower wage workers, they'll get replaced with a machine. Now that's happened in history before, but what it does is it's happening incredibly fast, and also the nature of the digital economy means the wealth that gets generated isn't shared out with everybody. As often has happened in the past, it's being concentrated in the hands of a few because the digital economy is closed. And I'm going to walk you through this. I'm going to explain to you why the digital economy is different. It is not like the economy of steel or of cars. Okay? And I just want you to think about something that we're going to keep talking about in a moment, but think about this. Everyone understands about why competition might be good in economies, right? Rather than having everything done by one company, right? Now, just think about this. That's one of the great reasons people like markets, right? Why market economies have some attraction, or economy did, right? And why most economies in the world over the last 50 to 100 years have adopted markets, at least in some areas, right? Now, just think about something. In Beijing, how many noodle restaurants are there? Thousands, right? There are thousands of noodle restaurants, right? Or even apartments. Let's say I want to rent an apartment. There are hundreds or thousands of people who have apartments, millions of apartments in Beijing, right? By the way, just let's make sure that we want to keep the window, we don't want everyone to get too hot in here. So could you open the window behind you if that's possible? That would be great. Now, I just want you to think about something. Who here has ever used like a word processing software, like Microsoft Word? Everyone's used something like that probably, right? Yeah. Well, have you used a spreadsheet? You know what I mean by a spreadsheet, like Microsoft Excel? Yeah? Now, how many different products have you ever installed? Like, how many different versions of Microsoft Word have you installed? Like, what? So if you've installed what? I've installed Microsoft Word. That's one, right? Who's installed 10 of them? You've installed 10 different versions of a word processor. That's good. Well done. That's unusual, right? But how many? If you think about it, there are thousands of noodle restaurants in Beijing, but there are probably less than 5, and probably mainly only one software application that is available in that category. There's Microsoft Word, and maybe there's one open source option. Here's one other question. All of you have got WeChat, right? Right, everyone has WeChat. I've got WeChat. How many other social networks do you have that you use? 3 or 4, right? Is there anyone who has thousands? Whereas if in Beijing you want choice in noodle restaurants, there are thousands of choices. If this noodle restaurant is bad, you can go to this noodle restaurant. That's what competition is about. If this lady's noodle restaurant is Haochu, we can all go to her noodle restaurant, right? And she can only take so many people, so there's a point when I won't be able to go there, we booked. But let's say her noodle restaurant is Hun Exin. Hun disgusting. Hun, right? No one will go there, right? There's competition. But think about social networks. What choice do you have? Once there's one dominant social network, you all need to be on it, right? There's no genuine choice anymore, right? Now they may do a good or a bad job, and they may face some competition, maybe from Facebook or something, but it's very limited, right? And notice this, if you think about digital products and you think about categories, maybe of software or even of technology products, there isn't that much competition, or the competition is to be the monopolist. You compete to own the market, right? And whoever wins ends up with the whole market. There may be intense competition to win, but once you've won, you control that market. But that's not what happens with noodle restaurants. There's something fundamentally different about the digital economy that means that you always end up with one or a few firms. So, I want to emphasize that it doesn't have to be the way with Donald Trump getting elected. It doesn't have to be the way that we end up with more inequality. We can have an open digital world where we everyone gets richer, and it's also fairer. Now, I want to explain how that is. So I want to talk about the closed digital economy and the nature of information. So let's look at the nature of these technology products we have, and particularly information. Now I want to start by suggesting to you that it's magical. You don't necessarily see this, right? Who's heard of Harry Potter? Right? Harry Potter's magic. You know, you can send spells around. You don't think of these products as magical because you're used to them, right? But it is, because it's different from everything we've been used to, right? Now, why is it different? Imagine I could click my fingers and I could get a copy 1,000,000 times of something with the click of my fingers, right? I'd be the richest man in the world. Imagine I can do that with rice. I can click my fingers and I have rice 1,000,000 times. Or cars, that's even better. Like, I could make Mercedes. I have one Mercedes, I click my finger, I have 1,000,000 Mercedes. I click my fingers again, I have 1,000,000,000 Mercedes. I have a Mercedes for everyone on the planet. I'd be the richest man in the world, right? Well, imagine I could do it with gold. Here's 1 gold bar. I click my fingers, here's 1,000,000 gold bars. It would be amazing, wouldn't it? Miraculous. But you can't do that. It's impossible for cars or houses or bread. But I can do that for information, right? And I want you to think about this for a moment. I mean, really think about this and let it settle in, because this is the single biggest point of this talk in a way. And it's obvious to you. You're familiar with this. But just think about it. For example, all of you've got to take off your right shoe. Take off your right shoe if you can. Okay? Take off your right shoe. Take it off. Come on. Okay. Now, give the right shoe to the person next to you. Okay? So, okay. I know shoes are a bit, but like I can't do anything obvious. So, now, do you notice that you're missing a shoe? Yeah? If you went home, have you taken off your shoe? You're supposed to take it off. Yeah. Then you really get into this. It's interactive. Very good. If you need to hold that, that's fine. You can just hold it. Don't worry. Now, no, but you really give the shoe to the person next to you, so you don't have it anymore. Okay? So you've got this shoe. No, you've got no shoe. You're definitely missing a shoe, right? You haven't suddenly got another shoe, right? Now, if you were to pick up your phone right now, and we can do this, who's got their phone? Yeah? Now, find someone you wouldn't mind sending a photo to on WeChat, right? Or a message, okay? And you can send them a message. You could say, I'm at the open mic, or you could send a picture. It can be of any picture on your phone to a friend on WeChat, okay? Now, and put up your hand when you've done that. When you've sent a photo or you've sent a message, just on your phone to someone on WeChat, right? It could be anyone who's done that. Okay? Once you've done it, put your hand up. So I can wait till everyone says. So when you've done it, put your hand up in the air. Well done. And how well. You can sound like this. You can sound like this. You've sent the message, put your hand up, be proud. You've sent the message, put your hand up. And how? I want you to check something. So just look again. So look at your phone that's expanded. Look again. So look. It's obvious. It's obvious, right? Now, as the image you've sent, it's even more than that. It's still there. Just, you want to check. It's still in the gallery, right? You can still see the picture on your phone. That means that all the ones and zeros that make up that image are still on your phone's hard drive. But they're now all that. But the point is, probably at least 2 copies have come into existence like that. You could have sent it to a whole group. You could have sent it to a whole group. Now, people. Now, let's give everyone their shoe back. But if I'd done that with my shoe, and I suddenly had another one, or I could do it with food, it would be a miracle. Or gold, or more Mercedes. My Chinese is good enough yet, but basically, we meet the technology is so kind of amazing. You know, like 10 years ago, no one had a smartphone, and now everyone has a smartphone, right? But we often get so obsessed with the surface, because it is amazing, the surface. It's like a beautiful woman, or something. Right? But we forget to think about how that technology Mother-in-law. This is the really substantive thing. The innovation, we've had innovation in agriculture, we've had innovation in making cars, but information around the campfire, there was Costas' copy. You got a copy of the story in your head, and I had a copy. Like right now, I'm saying things, and they're reproducing in your brain, like words. But in the past, it was a small it was a small part of our economy. Small part of our economy was information. It was most people produced rice, or they made steel. But it's about to be most of our economy. And this is also the point I want to get, is a world of digitalization is therefore a world of magic. You just sent a copy of something to your friends, and it was like my shoe. I gave the shoe away and I had another shoe. Wow! Wow! It's amazing! Like, it's truly amazing. Like, imagine what it would have been like if we'd been able to do that with rice. No one on the planet would have ever starved. Right? It's limitless. However, what does the magic mean? And this is my point. The point of this talk is that if you think of a hammer, right? Now, I can use a hammer to build a house, to build this building, but I can also use it to hit you on the head, right? Or think of Harry Potter. Magic is amazing, but it can be used for good or by Voldemort, right? So the question often isn't just that we have technology, it's how we use the technology. Yeah? Now, the choice here, I would offer to you, the fundamental policy choice around information is open or closed. Now, what do I mean by that? So, by closed, I mean that one person or company owns or has exclusive control of the information, and you have to pay them to use it, build on it, or share it. Now, open is the opposite of that. Open means that anyone can use it, build on it, and share the information, right? So closed information, for example, Windows, the operating system Windows, you have to pay to get a copy of Windows and use it, at least legally, right? You're not allowed to use Windows without paying. But for example, Linux, who's heard of Linux? Yeah? Linux is an operating system like Windows, but it's open source. Anybody can use it, anybody can build on it or modify it, and anyone can share it, and it's free to do that. Now, that is the big choice that you have in how you treat information as a society or as an organization. Okay? Now, we want to be, once we have it, but to get it in the first place, do that. So you can, right? Has anyone ever done get it wrong. I need 2 of these, H2O, right? So like oxygen plus hydrogen makes water. Like oxygen is the is that costless copying, which is digital, that's digital technology, right? Which is information technology. This is really information technology, right? Plus closed equals inequality. Right? Like it's like a reaction. You put these two things together. It's not this on its own, it's this plus this. This is the magic, but it's like magic plus Voldemort equals bad. Right? Yeah? But also remember, magic plus good equals Harry Potter. So it can go either way. Yeah? Now, I want to explain that to you. How does that work? And I don't mean, by the way, unlike Voldemort, I don't mean anyone's bad. Like, Bill Gates is probably a very nice man, right? There's no badness. Or Terry Gou, who runs Foxconn, these are not bad people. But it's the system will drive this reaction. And the reaction goes, well, if once I can make 1 million copies, right? Once I can make 1 million copies, and I own them all profit, if I'm the lucky person, right? Because remember, there's a lot of competition, but if I'm the one who ends up being the monopolist, I make a lot of money. I'm the richest man in the world. And guess who is the richest man in the world? This man. This is the richest man in the world. Why? Because he owns the costless copying machine for Windows. So he is now the richest man in the world, right? Right? And this, by the way, despite Microsoft really doing no innovation on Windows since like 1994, you know, it's like, I mean, there has been, I'm being a bit harsh, but right, it hasn't exactly been earth-shattering what Windows has done since 1994, but they've made vast amounts of money every year, right? Because every copy of Windows is pure profit. Now, and the thing is, they can supply everyone. Imagine you had a noodle maker who suddenly discovered that he could make noodles for free in Beijing. Well, suddenly he can supply everybody in Beijing, but even more, he can supply at any price down to about zero. There's no one else who can compete with that noodle maker because they now can just make more copies of their noodles like that. Whereas you have to buy flour, you have to spend time making the noodles, but that person can just click their fingers, right? It's impossible to compete. It's impossible markets where there's one or a few firms. Think of Google. How much does it cost Google to serve an additional search? Like an additional user on Google search engine? Zero. Because it's all just software and data. Or Baidu. Or how much does it cost Tencent to add someone to their network? Basically nothing, right? So you end up this, and that is not the same. Oh, what have I done? I've clicked out of the presentation. Oh, 1 moment. There we go, we're back. So that's really difficult. And also, all the people whose jobs are replaced. Windows, you don't see it, but software does replace someone's job, right? It helps run a machine that replaces somebody's job. Now, in some ways, that's a good thing. We want to automate things. That's a wonderful thing, right? It means we have less work to do. But it's a problem for that person, at least in the short run, right? And those are the people who end up voting for Donald Trump, partly, yeah? Now, they wouldn't have minded if they had a share. If all of these people had owned some of Microsoft stock, they'd be happy. But they generally don't. Bill Gates owns most of Microsoft stock, or not most of it, a good majority, a good substantial minority. Now, I just want you to think about this for a moment. When you think 6 of the 8 richest people on the planet are digital billionaires. You go back 30 years, none of them were. 6 of the 8 richest people are tech billionaires. Bill Gates, Larry Ellison, Mark Zuckerberg. It leads to this incredible concentration of wealth, and they own nearly as much as the rest of humanity combined. Now, I'm actually going to skip medicines for now, because I'm going to come back to this. So I want you to say, the same logic applies to medicine, but I want you to come here to the question of how do we pay for the first copy, right? Because the question we're asking, so what I'm saying is, we could have had open, right? We could have had open. Now, in the open world, like Linux, who knows who wrote Linux? Linus Torvalds. Yeah? Linus Torvalds. Now, is Linus Torvalds a billionaire? No. He makes a very good living, by the way. He's not poor. He's like a software engineer. He's well paid. He's famous to geeks. Right? He's not as famous as Bill Gates, but he's well known. But he's not a billionaire. Right?
Yeah.
The people who made Linux are not billionaires, but they make a good living. So my question though, so it's a different world. The open world also, it's incredibly productive. For example, most of the world's websites are run on Linux operating system. The servers that run them run on Linux. It's incredibly useful and productive. But how do we pay for the first copy? The question you ask about open, if it's free to everybody, how do we pay for it? Right? Now, I want to start off by saying one way you can pay for things is you can make enough money just in the short time that you have an advantage to get by. Or you can sell something else that people value, right? So just to take a stupid example, is anyone here a lawyer or training to be a lawyer? Is anyone here training to be an engineer? Right? Is anyone here training to be a doctor? No doctors, okay. Well, I just want you to think about it. So, building a bridge, all of the knowledge to build a bridge is open, right? You know, you can find how to build bridges in textbooks on engineering. Or doctors. Most of being a doctor in medicine is in a textbook, right? You can go read about how you diagnose things, right? Or being a lawyer. The law is open for everyone to read. You can go read the law, but you pay doctors, right? When you get ill, you don't just get the textbook down and start reading through it and go, I'm going to operate there, you know? I'll get my knife out, right? When you have a legal problem, you don't just say, I'll read the law myself and go and have an argument in court, right? You hire a lawyer. And if you're going to build a bridge, you wouldn't be very happy if Beijing were building a bridge and they said, we're just reading the textbook. We're not going to hire any engineers, we're just going to read the engineering textbook, right? And build the bridge. We pay people to have expertise. It may be open, but we pay people to apply it. And when they're applying it, if you're a doctor, you also create new knowledge. While you're busy operating on people and getting paid to do that, you also invent new ways of operating on people, better ways of operating on people. If you're an engineer building bridges, while you're being paid to build a bridge, you might think of a new way to build a bridge that's better. So there's one way that we can create new knowledge where we're already paying people for what their expertise, and they create new knowledge. The other way is how many of you have gone to university or are at university? Gone to university? I thought it would be more of you, but okay. Okay, that's very good. But if you've gone to university, the government pays for universities. And at university, they can come up with new knowledge, right? They do research, right? So we have several ways that we pay for first copy. For example, the theory of relativity by Einstein. Everyone had access to the theory of relativity, right? Because the government paid Einstein to do his research, and then he shared it with everybody. But I want to talk a little bit more about things like software or drugs. While the basic research behind software, the computer science, might be done at university, how do we pay for Windows to get created, or Linux to get created? So I want to start here with a proposal. And I emphasize, it's a proposal. It's not the perfect answer, okay? And I want you to think about the closed model. So in the closed model today, over here, people have money, right? And they buy information. So think of it, you buy apps. You buy an operating system, or you buy Microsoft Word, okay? And here's the person making the information. And if it goes well, they make a bunch of money. If it goes badly, maybe they don't, but if it goes well. And they can charge as much money as they think they can, right? That's their idea. Now in this case, look at this. This is a rich person. they can pay $3. This person can also pay $3. So this person charges $6. But this person over here, who would like a copy of Windows, or would like this drug. Think of drugs, by the way. Drugs are made of information. Drugs that you take, actually they're made of information. This person can't afford the drug or the copy of Windows. So they'd only have $1. So they just miss out. Even though this information costs $0 to make, you could make another copy for this person at $0 cost. They don't get one because of the price being charged. Okay? And this person ends up actually with $6. Now, that's the world today. Okay? Now, what about we could do better? Could we do better than that? And here's the model where everyone gets information and the innovator still gets paid. Maybe different amounts. I should have actually done it so the total amount is the same. But for example, here, everyone gets the information for free at the cost of making copies. But they all have to contribute money over here to what's called an innovation market fund. They put money in a fund, and what happens is that money is given out to innovators based on the innovations they come up with that are successful. So if you come up with a great piece of software, you get paid from this fund, but you don't charge users directly. You get paid this way. Now what's great about that is information is the cost of use. Information is available to everybody, right? Everybody. But you still have a market. You still have competition. In fact, unlike the model of the closed digital economy where you tend to end up with monopoly, in an open one, some people do well, some people come up with very successful drugs or very successful software that more people use, so they get paid more money from this fund. So there's competition, there's entrepreneurship, only people who will do something useful get rewarded, but you don't link it to the price of the good, right? And I'll emphasize something else about this story, that I don't want to make this graph, these diagrams too complicated. But one of the most important things about information is that people build on each other's ideas. Information isn't just like this. Like in the real world, innovators borrow from each other. For example, Einstein built on Newton. Isaac Newton came up with the theory of gravity, and Einstein improved Isaac Newton's theory of gravity. In the real world, we constantly are building on each other. And in this monopoly world, it's much harder to build on other ideas because they're charged for. Imagine, for example, that you were trying to, for example, build a spacecraft. And every time you wanted to use a theory of relativity in your design of the spacecraft or its journey, you had to go and license the idea from Einstein's children. It would be very inefficient, right? But that's often what goes on in this world. For example, I'll just take an example here. This phone, the 3G standard in your phone, has 7,600 patents that cover that. If you want to implement the 3G standard, you have to license 7,600 patents, right? And people even get into fights. There was a fight in the 3G standard. There was a fight in the people who wanted to design 3G. The fight was so big, and it was over money, and who got how much of this money over here, that they split into two different standards, which meant people who built phones had to support both. One of the reasons China has been so innovative in digital technology, particularly manufacturing, is because they basically ignored most of the patents and copyright for the time being. If we're honest, that's what's going on. It's largely been ignored down in Shenzhen. There wasn't a lot of IP enforcement going on in the 1990s and 2000s. As a result, what they kind of forced European and US manufacturers to do was license their technology at very low rates, or just have it used, right? And it meant it was incredibly innovative. And this isn't just when you ignore IP. Let's think of one other example when you think about the internet. The internet was like this. In the internet model, well, it was even, in fact, kind of like the government model. In the internet model, we all got to use the internet for free, the technology, the information design of the internet. Anyone could build a website. When you build a website, you do not need to pay any license for the technology that runs the internet underneath it, for the kind of software. That means we had Google, we had Baidu, we had Alibaba, we had my personal website. From the tiniest websites to the biggest, they could all start the internet without permission. Now imagine the internet technology being owned by one company. That company would have allowed some people to build stuff, absolutely, because it would have made money, but they'd have probably taken a fee from all of them. And they'd have also limited that innovation in subtle ways, right? In very subtle ways. What they'd have done is they'd have stopped certain technologies happening which threatened them. Technologies which would have replaced them as a monopolist, they'd have made sure they died at birth, right? Okay? And that would have hindered innovation. The reason the internet has been the most innovative place we have ever seen is because anyone could build anything they wanted on it. They could build whatever they want, and it was fantastically innovative. But that's not what's happening today with Facebook or WeChat. They're controlled by one company. If you want to build something on them, you need permission. And you won't notice it, but subtly, the things that get built there will be things that work for them and are not good for long-term innovation in China or Europe or the US or anywhere. Right? Now I want to wrap up, so I want to explain that we have this open model. It has competition. It has competition here. There's competition between different innovators to get money from this fund, and the money is not controlled by government. Government do not control how the money paid out. I want to explain here. There's an automated algorithm. When you're an innovator, the way to think about it is to just think of an area like music. Anyone can create music, but the money you get is based on how much people listen to your music, right? So it's automatic. The government has no role in handing out the money from the Innovation Market Fund. It's only dependent on consumers and an independent regulator, an independent supervisor, who make sure this money is given out to entrepreneurs, researchers, and innovators. Okay? And what I want to emphasize to you is it's made possible by costless copying. Just to go back to this diagram, if I said, hey, we can put all this money in a fund and pay for one car, right? We're all going to get together in China and pay for one Ferrari. Do people know what I mean by a Ferrari or like a Mercedes? Yeah? Or Audi? Yeah? Yeah? We're all going to get together in China, 1.3 billion people, and buy one car, okay? Yeah? So let's say a car costs 100,000, let's call it $1 million renminbi. Like it's a really fancy car, okay? $1 million renminbi. Let's go through this. So we all buy one car in China, and let's just assume there's 1 billion people in China. You've got a question? Yeah?
Dr. Pollack, can you be slower?
Slower, yes, okay. Thank you. 很好. Thank you. So, I know I'm running a little bit over time, that's why I'm getting nervous. Okay, just for a moment. Let's say we buy a car and it costs $1 million renminbi, okay? And there's 1 billion people in China. I know it's more than 1 billion, but for the numbers, let's call it 1 billion, okay? So how much does each person in China pay? So they pay 1,000th of a renminbi, right? So they pay 0.001 of a renminbi each, okay? Now, imagine we bought one Mercedes for 1 million renminbi, or one Ferrari, okay? How much does each person in China get to use that car? 一点点, right? They get to use the car 1,000th of the time, right? Which is like, it's about 1/3 of a day. I'm not sure I'm even getting this right. No, sorry, that's how much, they get it, sorry, 1 billion, they get to use it like 0.001 of a day, or something like that, right? They get to use it for about 10 minutes each day, of the whole year. Yeah? So, if we all got together and paid for one copy of a car, it wouldn't work very well. Yeah? We all get together in China, we pay for one car. Doesn't work. Yeah? It's obvious. Now, imagine it was a magic car that you could costlessly copy. Yeah? So we all get together in China, we all pay 0.001 of a renminbi. 1,000th of a renminbi, right? We've got our one car, but then suddenly we can copy the car as often as we like. Yeah? Once we've got one car, we can have a copy of the car for everyone in China. Yeah? It's kind of different. We've all paid 1,000th of a renminbi and we all have a car. Right? But think about if one person had the car copying technology. If one person owned the car copying technology, they build the car for 1 million renminbi, but they now own the monopoly. No one else is allowed to make copies of cars except them. So now they can charge everyone in China, maybe not 1 million renminbi, but like 1,000 or 10,000, and they become incredibly rich. But everyone pays 10,000 times more than they would have paid in this one. Right? So this is what I want you to understand, is what makes this model work. I could not do this for cars. If I was talking about cars here, it would sound like an old centrally planned economy. It would sound like the old model where we all like, but more than that, it just wouldn't work. Once I had one copy of information, it would cost money to make all the other copies. If this was a car, making copies is expensive. But making copies of information isn't. As a result, we can pay for one copy and have a copy for everyone. That's why an open information economy, if you combine it with open, equals magic, equals richer and fairer, right? In the old world, when we wanted things to be fairer, there was normally a trade-off with innovation. If we make things more equal, like everyone gets an equal share, then there's no reward for being innovative. There's no reward for entrepreneurship in the same way. Here, we can still have competition and different payoffs for innovators, but we can have access for everybody. And by the way, this is so, it's kind of obvious to some extent. It's why government have funded the creation of information for centuries. Has anyone heard of the famous socialist republic known as the United States? That's a joke, right? The United States has not been a socialist country, generally, right? But do you know what? The United States, of all of the research and development, I'll get another pen, I'll put it over here. All of the research and development for medicine, right? It's about 100, I have to do it in dollars, it's about 100 billion a year. 100 billion a year is spent in the United States on doing medical research, on cancer, on finding new drugs. Information, right? That's information. The government directly pays for 50% of that. They directly pay for 50% of information production in this area in the United States. Who paid for the internet? The US government. The US government paid for all of the research and all of the software development that made the internet. Okay? So we know this stuff is different. The problem is we're going often in the wrong direction. We're closing information up rather than making it open. And in particular, we are not funding it properly. We are not creating innovation market funds at the moment, and we're not finding ways to competitively and entrepreneurially fund for innovation in open ways. So, it's an open model is fairer, freer, and richer. It means more innovations, it means more jobs, it means better lives, it means a fairer deal. And it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but we only need to do better than the current closed model, which is helping lead to Donald Trump. And it's leading to less innovation. We only need to do better than that model. And maybe together, and that's why I like to come here we can think of something better. But when there is high inequality, extremism and instability rises. Annual Open Leaders Program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rufus. Very inspiring speech.
Thank you.
I'm sure that you must have a lot of questions. And there are also some people on the internet. They are listening to our video and they must have some questions. And let's give the opportunity to the audience live first. And who wanna ask questions first? Anyone? Anyone?
Thank you, Rufus. Could you explain more about the mechanism of the innovation, what's the name of that? Innovation Market Fund. How could that work, and how you allocate the money, and how you can, get the person rewarded?
Yes, so that's a great question. So, let me talk about that and come back. Thank you.
Wonderful. Oh, wow. Oh, a little bit loud. So, this box is clearly crucial. How do we distribute money to innovators? So, what you want is something that still respects market signals in terms of what people decided to use. So, let me just think of let me pick an example, let's say with medicines. So imagine this was medicines here. And so these are people inventing new drugs. For example, it might be a cure for cancer, it might be a cure for AIDS. So what happens is that when they come up with their innovation, if you invented a new drug, let's say, and let's say this lady here invents a new drug, and let's say this gentleman invents a new drug. So 3 new cancer drugs, for example. Your drug formula is open. So anybody can manufacture drugs based on that formula. You don't have a patent anymore. Anyone can do that. And obviously as a result, the drugs are available at the cost of manufacture, which is often very cheap. Today, a patented drug will be maybe 100 or even 1,000 times more expensive than the